I'm on right now. All right, so I apologize, but we just had a bit of a technical difficulty, so go ahead and bring it up. All right. All right. I don't know what's the matter with the input. Oh, I know what's the matter now. Okay, anyway, let me, that's gonna end. Power that.
Are you trying to get to YouTube?
Huh? No, it's skipping the HDMI channel, okay? Now, why don't you come on over here, okay? And you don't have to be on video, but we can have that conversation. Some other people may join us.
So you're having a video meeting?
Yeah, well, video in person, okay? So I'm just going to explain to you what's going on, okay? All right, you're not going to be on video. All right, so Africa never forgot us, okay? We're part of her, all right? And so when she never forgot us, and one of the reasons she never forgot us is because in 1885, the United States was one of 14 countries that created Africa in Berlin, okay, in treaty. Only one African country was there, Ethiopia, because Ethiopia had an army that was trained up to the standards of the Europeans, because emperor, right, in Ethiopia, empress at the time, okay, was the same as the Romanovs in Russia, same as Australia, Hungary. They were all emperors, empires. So they were peers. And so the Ethiopian army, that's why it was trained up to the European standard. And the European standard for warfare was learned here in America during our Civil War. Okay, 150 years ago when 200,000 Africans helped defeat the Confederacy. Okay, so.
Yeah, I didn't know the number, but yeah.
Yeah, 200,000. Okay, about 175,000 men and 25,000 women. Okay, all right. Then, we helped make that. If it wouldn't have been for us, it was problematical whether the North would have won or not. Okay, so we did that. The United States, while that war was going on, the Europeans had their observers embedded in our armies, and whether North or South, and they learned modern then warfare, which let them then defeat, remember, they were losing Africa because our armies sent waves of people in terms of defeating the colonials. And so you may have an army that may have been trained to have 1,000 people, but when 10,000 people come at you, okay, but now the warfare changed.
Okay.
All right, machine guns, Maxim guns, etc. Okay, so by 1885, Africa, after 400 years, was defeated on the coastal plain. Okay, but like the Ashanti Kingdom, they took the stool into the mountains, just like in Sri Lanka. Okay, and so the British and the Europeans got the coastal plains, but they never got the root of power of the Ashanti Kingdom and other kingdoms that, took their, and that's why in Ethiopia, the Ark and others is in the mountains. Okay, because they never let the colonials defeat that. Okay.
Because the vantage point is
you would now have to fight no matter how much that you have that on the coastal plains. Now you're going to have to really get in. You're going to have to create, because now you're going after the seat of the power of the empire, and everything is, everybody down to the royal guard in the kingdom. And hey, you're going to give us the coastal? All right, we get the Gold Coast. Great. Okay, we'll take that. Okay, And that gives us the rule and et cetera. In 1885, they met in Berlin so that they wouldn't have a fight among themselves dividing up Africa. Okay, all right. And the United States was one of the countries, and like I said, Ethiopia was the only African nation that was there. Okay. We're going to get more documentation and translate those documents and et cetera. Okay.
So now, can I ask this,
Sure.
because I'm trying to get a connection?
Uh-huh.
So the White House
Right.
recognizes this body.
Yes, the connection is that is part of a treaty that's in force today.
Okay.
Today. So each year, the U.S. State Department issues a book called Treaties in Force.
Okay.
All right. And each year, you'll see from 1885 till now, that's a treaty in force right now. And in that treaty, it makes us responsible as Americans for Africa. Okay, it gives us certain obligations, certain benefits. And so what we have done in the modern era since 1963, we've recognized the Organization of African Unity and its successor, the African Union, as the representative body for Africa. All right, just like, you know, the Europeans created in the 50s the European Union, okay, and came the European Commission and infrastructure. 63, Africa did the same thing. All right, but they learned from what had been created before. And so they gave power in their organization to civil society, the people. They embedded and said that in our organization, because our spirit is different, we want the people to have, okay, power in the organization. Okay. Now, it's taken a long road to go from 63, okay, to 2013. Okay, so it was a long road. How did that develop? You know, the first road was to get rid of the colonials, because the United States made a tragic decision after World War II, because President Roosevelt died. President Truman decided to side with the colonials. President Roosevelt had set it up so that we sided with the people, but he was dead. Okay, he had created what's called the Atlantic Charter. Okay, and it said we're fighting World War II so people can be free. Not governments can go back and control people, but et cetera. But you know, remember that's the whole where that came out of. And so when he died, his wife carried on, okay, and as a driving force and worked with groups to create the United Nations. And there's two things that happened in the United Nations that were unique to the world. One, that it was created. Remember the League of Nations, you know, that failed. Haile Selassie went before him. Look, help us in Ethiopia defeat the Italians and Nazis, or what they're doing to us is going to come to you. They ignored him, it did, and, you know, Roosevelt learned, right? Now, after the war, when the Nazis were defeated, but some of their fellow travelers, like the Palestinians and the others who came out of World War I, okay, they weren't. That's not remembered, but in 1948, when they created the United Nations, the second thing they did was the Human Rights Agreement. For the first time, governments in the world agreed that we as people had inalienable rights. Never had been done before. You know, people talk about the Magna Carta. That was just Britain and her empire that she didn't use when, by the time of the 20th century, she wasn't living up to that whole standard if you were a subject people, which is why Gandhi during World War II basically sat it out and said, you know, you're not going to give me my freedom, and, you know, how are you different from Nazi Germany? Okay, but 1948, we now have a human rights agreement worldwide. So now when we bring it forward in 2006 under the United Nations, they decided that on that, we're going to have a peer review. Okay, so nations leader. Okay, so peer review. So the nations are going to peer review each one of 193 members of the United Nations. So each nation goes under a peer review. The other 192 can talk about them. Oh, you say you made a commitment to the United Nations Charter and your Constitution says this, and you have treaties that say this. Well, really, how are you treating your people? Okay. And so peer review. Now, we didn't go into that because remember, this was during the Bush era. And from 2000 on, okay, basically we had opted out of human rights in the United Nations. Okay, we weren't participating. We really had been MIA. Okay, but now Barack Obama got elected, and among his first actions in 2009 was to rejoin the United Nations as a full-fledged member, including the Human Rights Council. All right.
So we've got a representative on their council now.
Yeah. We're fully back in there. Okay. All right. And what was unique is that now this peer review. Now the United States is one of those nations under review. Okay. So we went through the first one, and all sorts of bad things were said about us. Okay. All right. But in 2009, when Obama did this, he set the standard because what he said was, look, country ain't perfect because when it was formed, I couldn't even be, much let alone being a citizen, much let alone being a voter. Because remember when the country was formed, that if you were white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, but there you go. If you weren't a property owner and you were white, well, too bad. Because most people don't know how the country was formed, okay? It was formed by the 1%. Okay, who basically they were saying that when the king said you can't go any bigger than the Allegheny Mountains, that's it. And we take care of the rest of the continent. And our 1% of the day said, say what? You mean we can't have the Ohio Valley? And so that story is we don't like to talk about the 1% of the day. Right. All right. So now we come forward into the 20th century. Okay. We come to the latter part of the 20th century. We come to the era of Barack Obama. Okay, change. All right. So the change internationally is we say, hey, look, we got problems. Everybody has problems, but we have a method of change because we still own our first constitution. France, I think, what are you on your fourth, fifth, whatever. Okay. All right. And yes, some of the new African nations are on their second, third, fourth. But if you look at our, we had the Whiskey Rebellion. George Washington had to put on the uniform, go out, and et cetera. So it's a growing pain, okay, of countries that we don't learn about in school.
Right. So now we're part of the review.
We're part of the review. So we did the first review, and there was over 200 comments about the United States.
I mean, like what, like how we treat minorities or women?
Oh, everything, everything. What commitments did we make?
Okay.
What commitments does our Constitution say?
Right.
And what treaties did we sign? And what, et cetera. So all that's fair game in the peer review. And what's unique about the peer review in those countries, then the civil societies in those countries can say to their governments, hey, the United States is X, Y, and Z, and they work it out in their countries, then their countries make the comments, and then it goes back. But if you are a United Nations civil society organization, you can make direct comments. Okay. You have to be a United Nations authorized organization to do that. Be officially, X, Y, and Z. All right. And so FAU is not a United Nations civil society organization, but we are an African Union, and we partnered with a United Nations organization. When the African Union brought us all together, I found a partner in the New Future Foundation.
It's called what?
The New Future Foundation, okay. Headed by Dr. Dolores Blakely. Okay. She's called Queen Mother.
Okay. I did see.
Right, and she's an Ashanti Queen Mother. Okay. And she didn't come out of UNIA as a Queen Mother. She came out as an Ashanti ennobled Queen Mother by the Ashanti king.
Okay.
All right, and I'll get to that in just a second. But she's been up in the United Nations for over 40 years. She came initially as a protege of Queen Mother, Moore, who did come out of Marcus Garvey's UNIA.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and she lived to over 90 years.
Wow.
She was.
let me back up and ask you a quick question. The designation of Queen Mother is official through
The Ashanti,
okay.
the Ashanti king. Okay, see, it came initially from in America through the UNIA, Marcus Garvey's organization.
Okay.
Because he knew the history of the Ashanti kingdom.
Okay.
So the elders in the organization were called Queen Mothers. Okay, but Dr. Blakely, as a protege of Queen Mother Moore. Okay, but she was in her own. She was 10 years a nun. Okay, and was a Bachelor of Science and Religious Studies from the Catholic University, and 2 master's degrees in education, and a doctorate in education, a Fulbright scholar. Okay. So, a lot of people get saying, I'm Dr. X, Y, and Z, or I'm Queen Mother X, Y, and Z. Now, the Queen Mother, if you come out of UNA, has, but you can use that term.
Okay. All right.
But does it have any real connection to where? So for her, she went back to the homeland. She went to Senegal. She went to Ghana. And when she went to Ghana, the spirits moved the king to take her, and the spirits moved her, such to go to the king and et cetera. And they brought her to the Queen Mother, of the Ashanti king. So the Queen Mother of the Ashanti king is who makes the king in the Ashanti tribe. Okay, you can't become the king until a Queen Mother, the Queen Mother, makes you the king. All right, so sort of a checks and balance. Okay.
So that relationship is the official sort of connection to monitoring the treaties. Making direct comment.
Direct. Okay. So you can, if you're a UN agency, nonprofit organization, they call it civil society. All right. Then you can make direct connections. So we joint ventured.
Okay.
We came together and we said that because I'm an ex-diplomat. Okay. For Guinea, I do things, cross the T's, dot the I's, et cetera. Okay. The Honorable David Morrow, was my mentor in this, and he was the senior honorary consul for the Republic of Guinea to the United States, i.e. took the State Department quite a long time to give us American veterans that honor, but we had it, and that's where, and when I say diplomacy, real diplomacy is talking about where a country where everybody is African. It becomes then, a whole different set of governance. You can talk about, where it came from. So we now are a joint venture. So the United Nations allows you to joint venture with another organization. Well, Friends of the African Union and New Future Foundation, we joint ventured. We submitted a solution based on what President Obama, remember I said we had the first review. Now we're in the second review. Okay.
And I'm sorry, you said you submitted, I didn't want to miss that, you submitted a...
Yeah, we submitted a solution, to problems that President Obama, that he put in. He said the United States has problems. And the number one problem in human rights that we have is racism. The number 2 is criminal justice issues. So he went down the line. So you could tell that this may not have been popular with some people. But what we did is we took all those 10 issues and we said the solution to it, is what's called quantitative easing. And basically what he did to save, everybody's looking at the economy right now and saying, man, the economy is going like that. Because President Obama, when he came in the office, You remember when he came
I
in?
remember well.
You remember
Yeah.
when he came in office and that $900 billion in TARP and,
Mhm.
nobody ever thought, where'd that come from?
Mhm.
It's called quantitative easing.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I didn't know the terminology, but.
Yeah. So that's where the president tells the Treasury Secretary to get our agent, the Federal Reserve, and the owners of the Federal Reserve to issue the authority out of New York Federal Reserve, okay, to buy debt that is created by the banks.
Mhm.
So then the banks go around and say, anybody got some debt that they want to sell?
Mhm.
Anybody got something that meets the criteria that the president has set out? Well, that first 900 billion, what he set out as the criteria was that great scramble for that 900 billion. He set the criteria, everybody scrambled to get a project to, to get out of that funding. Okay. All right. And then he bought the debt. Okay. So that was the first stimulus.
Yeah.
Second stimulus was, okay, like that, but that was the procedure.
Right.
The president tells the Treasury Secretary, and by the way, that Treasury Secretary is the guy who caused the problem.
Right.
Okay. Stan O'Neill was faster than the boys over in Lehman Brothers. The black man who was in charge of Merrill Lynch. Okay. He was faster when the crisis hit. He got his stuff in faster to have them choose him, but it was the wrong choice. Because the Lehman Brothers was basically, they had over 3,000 contracts around the world, okay, that everybody, when they weren't chosen and they went up, all those contracts froze.
Okay.
And when those contracts froze, then everybody said, no, I'm not giving you any money. I don't know if you're going to pay me back my money. And, I'll keep my money. And, you had banks like Citigroup saying, I don't know how much money we have on conference calls. So crisis of confidence.
Right.
Okay. And the key that came out of that, we didn't know how much dark money there was in the world. Okay. People like me who are members of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, all right, we thought that maybe it was $300 trillion in the world, 75 trillion of it being the government's, 75 trillion being, that we could track, or half of it we could track, 150 trillion of it being what they do among themselves. Well, we were wrong. All right. What Dodd-Frank did, why you had Ron Paul and et cetera agreeing with it, et cetera, it's because it had an audit of the Fed. Okay. And that some 300-page audit basically showed that the dark money in the world is $700 trillion.
That's an inconceivable number.
Yeah, but what it is where you make a trade here and I make a trade here, and we make synthetic and we strip this and we do that. Okay. Now I had an inside relative to that because I'm a member of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition.
Okay.
We come out of Ted Kennedy's shop.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
And it's still an existing, persistent
yeah, we're 27 years.
Okay.
All right, long term. That's what this NCRC is about. Okay. All right.
And the premise is what we're investing in
community reinvestment.
For quantitative easing.
No. Community Reinvestment Act. Straight out. Okay. Community Reinvestment Act. There's a law in the books that says the banks, wherever they are, and they get their money from, they have to reinvest back in the community.
Okay.
All right. 1977. Okay. And so that law's on the books. Yeah. Well, you go to any of your banks and say, I'd like to see your CRA statement. And they'll bring out a brochure or a book and et cetera, and will show you what they've done in their service area where they got their money from by law. So yeah, but see, this is part of their review also. When they go up for their charter, they have to say, what have we done? What have we done in the community? Now, the bad thing is, of the last year of all the reviews, only less than 2% had bad reviews. Okay. But it is. All right. So now you have that convergence. So basically, I've had the experience at that level of dealing with community reinvestment acts. As NCRC, we meet once a quarter with the nation's biggest banks, Federal Reserve banks, go in, and through our Business Bankers Council, we go in, go into a room, close the door, and, talk straight. No notes are kept, and et cetera. Okay. And then once a year, we meet with the Federal Reserve Chairman, and the Federal Open Market Committee members are invited now. We've had the New York Fed, et cetera. So this is an annual event. Okay. All right. So now we know what's going on. Now in 2011, with this GAO report, we know what's going on. We know how the Fed operates. We know that they wrote themselves in 2008 a $16 trillion authorization. That's what's a T. All right, to issue new money.
Okay. So there's this money that you guys have a right.
No, not you guys, us.
Well, I'm sorry.
There's all governments, quantitative easing is a process that governments can print new money.
Right.
And there's a process called Basel that everybody, International Bank of Settlements, that everybody's agreed since World War II with adjustments to how we're going to handle money.
Right. So I'm still, so that as a backdrop.
Yes.
Is setting up a premise for
Barack Obama, who has used quantitative easing to save America.
Okay.
First, he used it, Bush didn't want to do it, but, we were in that strait that he did it. But instead of the Republican winning the election, the Democrat won the election. So now he comes in the office, he's in charge of that money. Okay. And so now the first run that he did, he has to save the economy. So, and plus our representatives aren't at bat for us.
Okay.
All right. Our representatives, the Congressional Black Caucus, okay, when they were at the zenith of their power, that they were chairmen and chairwomen of committees. They didn't issue the subpoenas. They didn't do that. They did not. They didn't do like the Tea Party, okay, like reparations, okay? So we now know that all these major companies that are now surviving now, they started it, that they issued slave insurance policies, they did banking for, So now if you're chairman, you can ask for, like what the Tea Party chairman are doing, the ultra-Republican when they're chairman, they're issuing subpoenas, Benghazi, et cetera.
Right.
They could have did the same thing, they didn't do it.
Okay.
All right. And so, but when they didn't do it, so we don't have those facts. Now they're not chairman, they're, in some cases, they're minority ranking member. Okay, that means that the ranking member and the majority has more power than you, and the chairman of the committee ain't gonna let you as a ranking member on the Democratic Party do anything necessarily that is gonna be edifying. All right, to you and the party, but they had that chance. All right. Now, but that wasn't Barack Obama who had to lead them in there, because he's having a big enough fight trying to save the whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
All right. So he's the kit and caboodle president. I'm the president for everybody, and we've got over 40 congressmen, and the Tea Party shows you when you have a small group can drive the whole engine.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So now he's issuing money.
Okay.
All right.
He meaning the president.
The president is now issuing money, $900 billion. Then to save the economy 3 years ago when it was going down again, okay, what he started doing was he started buying $85 billion a month worth of mortgages. All right. All of a sudden people could get mortgages if they have the right credit score. Now they bumped the credit score from, you got to have a minimum of 620 FICO score now. Okay, where before it was like 540, 560 was the floor, but now, they now bumped it to 620.
Right, more, it stabilizes.
Yeah, we would get into that, but just so
that's the goal. That's the stated goal.
Well, NCRC actually created the low doc loan program. Low doc, low documentation. Not the no doc. What they started to do under CRA, the big complaint by the banks was that, hey, we're not making money. Then they found, oh, wow, we're making money on those loans. We're doing low docs. We're making money. let's invent something called the no-doc loan. Okay, let's make sure that when we invent the no-doc loan, that Fannie and Freddie have to buy it. Have to buy it. Okay, and then when it happens that those no-doc loans that that they lied, that they said, yeah, I can afford this. Yep, and et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
I work there.
So let's blame them. Okay. And that's what froze up that whole market, because they created strips. They took your loan, then they stripped off the interest on your loan and created a new financial instrument on that. Then they took the principal PMI that you do, let's make a new instrument on that. And then let's take the principal, and that's something separate. So now out of that one, you may have 3 to 5 different new financial instruments. And so when your loan goes down, that means that you've got now 5 different strips out there that may be held by the pension fund over here. Okay. And so when Barack is solving that or any president would have solved it, okay, by pumping money into the economy. But he made the decision to do that. He's pumped $1.4 trillion into the economy. Okay. All right, through 2013 for just housing. So they've spent, let's call it 8 trillion of the $16 trillion has been spent since 2008.
How much?
8 trillion.
Of the 16.
Of the 16.
Okay.
So we were bold enough to do the calculations and say, well, I'll tell you what, we want 5 trillion. That gives us, and what we did is we said, not only do we want it, but we want it in the universal periodic review to solve institutional racism. We wanted to solve criminal justice issues. We wanted to solve indigenous issues. We wanted to solve the 10 areas.
Right.
Okay.
And see, that's where I come in. I mean, but it has been really good to get the education and the background, because a lot of that I would have had. I don't have that deep historical knowledge, but I've worked in literally every one of those 10 areas in my in my career, and so, and that's kind of what interests me in sort of showing up, because I'm really tired of the symbolic gestures that get made, but there's no real systemic action, change, and that's what. So
that's up to. Remember, it said be the change. Be.
Well, sure.
But you can't be the change if you don't know.
That's true. And you got to guard the door, because I mean, they're the same old people who show up to grab onto things, and again, be symbolic, but there's no systemic, change. Can I take just a minute or two to tell you a little bit about my background, so I can tell you why I have an interest? I used to investigate the police for a division of city managers. It was called the Office of Municipal Investigations. OMI. And I was an investigator there. I started out working for the police department when I was in law school. And then I transferred to OMI and became an investigator. And I don't know if I'd have still been there today, but I left based on the Lorenzo Collins.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing that made me know I could not stay there. Up until that, I could live with what we did, because it was always evidence-based. There was integrity. I worked for a person who was going to call it the way he saw it, no matter who we had to report to, right? But then when the city manager got on TV and said that the Lorenzo Collins shooting was justified, the city council said, how can you say that? OMI hasn't investigated. So basically, he knew he had a problem with my boss at the time. So he moved him out of the position and put someone in there who was going to make the finding that matched what he had told the media. And so I basically was told what the outcome of my investigation was going to be. Well, the way it was put to me is that we're in a box, because the city manager's already been on TV saying it. And I said, I'm not in a box. He may be in a box, but if I'm not in a box, I'm gonna do this the way I've always, done it.
Evidence-based reporting based on the Apata experience and et cetera.
That, I mean, we had a very detailed, we would talk to the coroner, we would go to the scene of the shooting, we would measure off, people said, he was approximately X amount of.
Yeah, so tell people what the Lorenzo case was about.
You know, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. So I didn't know. Well, that was when a mentally ill patient, someone who was in the psychiatric ward of the hospital, had escaped, and the police were called, and they tracked him to someone's backyard, and he was surrounded by the police, and he, based on the information that I sort of discerned, was concerned because there were guns drawn, and he had a brick. And there was a black police officer who had almost talked him down to lay down his brick.
Set the brick down, bro.
And a white officer then rushed in and maced him. And the evidence indicated that he had his head down, was trying to escape the mace. He was fleeing to escape the mace, but the police said that he was charging him with the brick, and so that's when he was shot and killed. Right? Yeah. So, but I was taken off the investigation. At one point, the then chief investigator came to me and said, "You've got some other investigations you need to focus on, and so I'm going to take you off of this investigation." And so, I mean, I had no choice but to accept that. But when the report came out, my name is still
on the report.
And so I basically had to say, that name belongs to me. You
take my name off.
You can't use it any way you want. And I don't stand by anything that's in it. It was poorly written. It was structured to make a finding that was not relevant to his death. So there was a finding made, but it was that the police had put one another at risk because they were in a semicircular formation when they shot. So they could have inadvertently shot another.
Their rules of engagement were violated, completely. Okay. Exactly. So people have to understand that there are rules of engagement for police,
Right.
And if you violate those rules, like in Cleveland, right, they're bringing up the 12 officers on rules of engagement violations.
Right. So can I ask, this is a broadcast. There are people who are participating in this meeting or listening, or is there be...
There's people who will, right now when they find me, will do that, but there's other people who will, so don't say name.
They can watch it later.
Okay, right. Yeah. And so then, probably if I tell you enough of this, some people will probably figure out, but
if they think enough are interested, because the reason this is valuable that they have, because Black Lives Matter, and all this is that in our community we don't understand how this process works. That a policeman has 2 investigations that go on, no matter most departments. Right. There is one that is the criminal, and there's one that's civil. Exactly. They're an employee. They are our employees. So there's rules.
And there's police, and then there's a civilian. Yes. Right. And the whole reason that OMI came into existence is that there was no trust that the police could investigate themselves objectively.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I had an opportunity, because I knew it was time for me to do something else, to then go be at a nonprofit.
Okay.
So then I went to CCY.
All right.
And so I got to work with low-income, disadvantaged populations. We have fantastic programs there. We had daycare, early childhood development. We had after-school tutoring kind of programs. We had an informal juvenile justice program where we were sanctioned by a juvenile court that as long as it was a nonviolent offense, that we could give creative adjudication. And we always did it around education. The requirement was, you got to go to school. Yeah. We expect this grade. If you're struggling, we expect you to enter a tutor program.
Social impact.
We had satellite offices and recreation centers where families could come in, whatever problem you had, we had a referral process. We staffed the community monitors that worked with the Cincinnati Human Rights Commission. And so, they were the ones who'd be out on the street, easily identifiable during times of tension. When they had the curfew, we worked it out.
Thomas, yes. Okay.
Well, he wasn't, I was gone before he was.
Okay,
And-
before 2001?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
it was before.
Yeah, okay.
He was there. And then my next step in my career was I then went to Cincinnati Public Schools. I was recruited by Dr. Adamowski, and so then I went to Cincinnati Public Schools. And I was, the irony is that I'd spent a few years as a teacher before I went to law school, before I went to the police. So I came back as the Chief Officer of Human Resources, where I got an opportunity to impact the disproportionate numbers of minority teachers versus student population. So we had 70% African American student population, and we had 30% African American teaching population. So I worked to get grants from the state and partnered with UC to write some grants to diversify teaching, because we had a disproportionate number of African American substitute teachers. So we got a grant to expedite their certification, to bring them on, and we were able to increase. We got close to 36%. Well, the increase was 36% of the so the outcome became about close to 42% African American teachers. I was trying to do percentage on the
yeah. So you had about a 40% increase from that 30%, and that's amazing. And for those who are not in the educational process, I've been a board member of both a charter school and an LSDMC member. So you know, if you don't understand people, to do a 40% turnover in change in teachers, okay, all right, is an amazing thing.
It was. We worked hard. I mean, you know, and for a lot of them, it was how do you sustain your life, because you got to go back to school now, even though it's expedited.
Yeah.
So we had emergency funding for them for things like, you know,
basically,
if your car breaks down,
yeah,
right? You know, because we needed to help them get through the program, you know. So that all worked out really well, but of course it was all erased because of some bad fiscal decisions at the district. And then they needed to lay off a bunch of teachers.
Last hired, first fired.
Yeah, even though we were trying to have creative ways to make it based on
the contract rule.
On merit. But yeah, I tried one approach, and it helped a little bit, because there was an arbitration that said we couldn't take into account a master's degree, but you could take other skills and qualifications. So we said, when you're looking at people, then don't talk about them having a master's degree. Talk about the coursework that they took. Because, you know, even though it's an irony, the point is that you could use that, but you couldn't use the master degree all by itself as a designation. So that was a part of my life. But then, you know, politics are politics. And at one point, they non-renewed everyone's contract. I had really been successful in holding teachers accountable. I am not anti-union, but I am anti-abuse of children, ineffective abuse of teachers. And so I've become very good at separating ineffective and abusive teachers from the district. And so it didn't necessarily make me a darling.
But if you were a failure as a teacher, you were the nemesis. Okay.
Right, and we didn't have a lot of time to play with, right? Because, you know, this children's development education, right?
That's why President Obama did this, because by third grade, if they don't have the basis, you have to have immense remedial. And
a lot of, I read in there because a lot of that was going on. As a matter of fact, children were being turned off to education by the end of the third grade because they were disciplining the natural inclination, energy of young.
They didn't need they didn't have ADHD. This was what they were.
It's naturally, and it's the same behaviors that in other children weren't seen as as a problem.
Right.
So, and you know, I have a bad habit of speaking truth to power. So, you know.
Well, it's not a bad habit. It's the habit that we have to.
Right.
Yeah.
I say that tongue in cheek because I make no excuses for it. Right. So then I ended up working in secondary ed at community colleges. And so I worked at the University of Cincinnati, I worked at Columbus State, and then I started consulting for a company that works with community colleges across the country. And I guess what I'm saying is that and I am an attorney. So, so I'm saying that almost everything on there, I have in some way, shape, or point through my career had some focus on. And that's kind of what brought me here to here, because I've sort of been trying to connect with the other organizations that are allegedly doing something about what's going on right now in the city.
Well, that strikes a key point. Allegedly, and when you look at the numbers of what's happening, so just for clarification, I'm off the LSDMC. Okay, I'm just a grandparent raising a grandkid in the system now. Okay, with an NGO on a local basis, that's all about change. Okay, all about systematic, fundamental educational change, that we're doing this after school. All right, while as parents doing it during school, making sure that what it is. So, but now, so our program that we're putting together as Friends of the African Union is after that 6 o'clock bell, when facilities are available. When the program, see, people have to understand that this $1 billion of new facilities is theirs.
Right.
Okay.
And I was there during the building of most of
the decade-long building where some people made $1 million, as an employee during it, got a great boost on their resume and was going around. A lot of people made a lot of money during that building process. But I've met several times with the superintendent, about that process, and what these buildings will look like in 10, 20 years from now. It'll be interesting to do that.
Well, a lot of that predated the current superintendent.
I know it predated, but I'm talking about, I met her when she was superintendent. I met her before she was the assistant, et cetera, but specifically under her watch as it closed out, and having to deal with that aspect for one particular school, that just sort of got forgotten in the mix. And we're the group that was told that Hyde Park wouldn't be our swing space because it wasn't ready, and now it's open now for the gifted students. It just so happens, and we had on our team, by day I'm an engineering firm. All right, and we had a IBEW journeywoman. When they're talking about the electricity, we couldn't handle the load, et cetera. And, I'm an electronics guy, and, all three of us looked at the engineer, the electrician, and me. We looked at each other. And the bad thing is that for them, is we have it on tape. The meeting that we had with the facilities manager, et cetera. So we hope that that's rectified. But if parents don't speak out, if they don't come together, but they also have to be educated. Like you said, 70% of our students are from, the African American community. It's even more now, but what is key is that you have to transform the parents, and the PTO doesn't do transforming, because people don't understand that the PTO, Parent Transforming Organization for us, but the Parent Teacher Organization was a creation of Brown versus the Board of Education, and the PTOs were created by the segregationists, whereas the PTA stuck with us in terms of Brown versus the Board of Education. The PTOs were created by the segregationists. So they don't have a good track record of caring about our kids in any case. All right, so CPS uses that, but that comes back to that whole thing of what we're doing under My Brother's Keeper. And I give people this whole scenario that goes around there that, people talk about what Barack hasn't done for the Black community. Well, it's part of what we do for ourselves. To ask him as our president, as Americans, what we want to have done for us.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've done a lot of damage because, and I don't want to direct, but when CCY was disbanded and what they did when that was fragmented and sent to different other agencies, the fact that it's a fragmented process, no disrespect to those agencies, but they just can't do it the way CCY did it. We would employ between 1,400 and 2,000 low-income students.
It was famous for, you know, the youth employment program.
We gave them their first exposure to a work ethic. We started doing professional development kinds of in-services, you know, because we thought if it's good for adult professionals, it's good for these students to learn how to become adult professionals. We believed in redemption. You know, if you messed up, I mean, you got a certain chance. Some things were non-negotiable. You go to a job and steal or something like that, you're out of the program. But being out of the program 1 year doesn't mean that we have forever written you off. In fact, typically we would say to a student, you're not ready, you've engaged in this behavior, or you've repeatedly not been able to follow the rules, and so we're going to dismiss you from the program. Come see us next year. You know what I mean? So we had all of that where we had to hold them lovingly but accountable. And but when that went away, I really do believe that began a deterioration of opportunity for young, low-income youth. And I think having nothing else to do, I think there was an uptick in some of the you know, negative behaviors because they're going to use this energy in some way.
Yeah. And again, with the recreation centers closing early in the evening, and there's nothing to do. Nothing to do in the neighborhood. And the neighborhoods, and again, one of the reasons our kids come into schools because they're suffering from PTSD. Okay, you know, they're raised in war zones. Okay, I'm a veteran. Okay, and you know, I got grandkids, and you know, my grandson has been shot at 3 times because he was in with his relatives, and they were shooting at, you know, and you know, misdirected fire. Okay. And so, you know, that has an effect of people. It has an effect, we know, for us as veterans. So what makes people think it wouldn't have an effect for a young kid? Okay. So President Obama realized that. So see, since he's been reelected, he's been putting things in place. Now, it's up to us. Like My Brother's Keeper, it's a program where it's up to us. Okay. So when he started it, and this is where it's great for us because we learn from what the other cities have done. And see, the only part they've concentrated mostly on is the crime.
Right.
Okay, 6 points. Okay, you know, 6 points. Number 1, get a kid ready to go to school. Number 2, get a kid by 3rd grade reading up to grade level. Number 3, get a kid to graduate from high school. Number 4, get a kid in college or some kind of career track. Number
and
5,
help them with persistence. I'm sorry.
Well, that doesn't say, but you know, that the details are in the pudding.
Right.
You know, he wanted 6 liners.
I got you.
Okay, that you know you can do like what I'm doing and just. No,
wow.
but that's correct. I'm just giving you the background like I've been doing. So you know, he gave the issuing report of February of 2014. Okay, initial cities join. Second report comes out 1 year later on what has been done and et cetera, so that new cities can dwindle down on experience. Okay, all right. Now we have the accounting in the house. You might want to come over this side. Okay, all right. All right, Bob Cash, my business. Okay, all right.
So I'm sorry, I see that you were at
5. Yeah, 5. Okay, you're talking about where kids. Okay, all right. So the number 5, your kids get their first job or second job, but by 25 they're getting a job. Number 6, okay. The neighborhoods that they grow up make them safe. Okay. All right. So those 6 areas, they made it. Okay. Here's the framework. Here's my government. You can ask anything of my government, put it together, submit it. Okay. With your mayoral leadership or it's mayoral or your council or your county leadership, or you do like what we do, you create it so that we go from public-private partnership so that the public on one end, okay, has an agenda. And that we then create a formalized public-private partnership, because so we know what, and so we're actually the first My Brother's Keeper to do it like this. Okay. Most people think of it as a top-down process. He didn't say that. Okay. He didn't say that. In the enabling legislation, it doesn't say that. Okay. And so that what we said for Cincinnati, let's set a example of bottom up.
Okay.
Okay. So we had our conference. Now I'm in charge of the Economic Development Committee. How are we going to sustain this stuff that we say, the social services, the whole infrastructure? How are we going to sustain this? So economics makes sense. You know, at Friends of African Union's economic empowerment, okay, we get social enlightenment, okay, and so how do you sustain it? For how we like the stadiums, like the waterworks, like the convention center, things that, okay, you sign an agreement with government and people to say that for X period of time, we're going to return services to you of equal or better in terms of those services. You take the sewer system, okay, you've seen your sewer rates increase, okay, every year, all right, and they will be because of the way it's designed. Okay, and we were in that early fight, and so the sewer rates are going to increase 3 to 7%. Okay, in the foreseeable future.
They're going to go even higher.
They're going to go every year. Every year.
Every year.
Yeah. So Bob's an accountant. We did an analysis. I told you by day I'm an engineering.
The
Okay.
EPA came in and sued the county, and they're under, you know, they've been like whatever arsenic, whatever levels, they're too high. Well, it would cost this much money to fix it, so we'll just pay the fines. Now the EPA's come in and said, you've got to make changes.
Sanitary sewer overflow. So
and that's what's driving the increase?
That what was driving the increase is that we're pouring wastewater from the sewers into the Ohio River. Okay. Tens of millions of gallons of wastewater, untreated wastewater. Okay, and they said, no more, no more. Okay, so in 2006, the city and the county, which jointly own the sewer system, entered into a consent decree where, hey, we're not guilty, but you know, we'll fix the problem. And if we don't fix the problem, then you can add more daily fines and you can do bad things to us. And they guesstimated in 2006 it was going to cost $3.56 billion to fix the problem. It turned out they were wrong. So far, the engineering that they've used to do this has failed 3 times. All right, so there's maybe another $2.5, maybe $3 trillion worth of work, $billion worth of work that needs to be done on the sewers. So the problem is you have to pay for that.
The Metropolitan Sewer District says they have to invest $200 million a year over the next 20 years. They have to issue bonds for $200 million a year.
And that's why my water bill, no matter how low my water use is
right, we just climb.
Yeah.
In San Luis, they took a
That's not
different.
sustainable.
Well, in San Luis, they took a different approach. They just assessed everybody a 70% increase in their water bill. Instead of the gradual increases over 20 years, they just said, okay, we're going to bump them 70% right now.
And this is happening all throughout America. The problem was when they did this originally under the Clean Water Act, there was federal government money available. The strategy that was successful under the Bush era was to kill those funds. Okay, so you have the unfunded mandate, clean water, fundamental clean water, because if you're pouring tens of millions of wastewater in one end, and the waterworks is drawing the water out on the other end. Okay, so now the water plant has to clean that stuff up. Okay, so that's happening all over America. It was originally about a $1.2 trillion problem. It's down to $800 billion. We got our part. We don't really know what the final figure is because the engineering has failed. Okay, but it's a fundamental problem. So that's why your bill is going to go up, because we didn't take we're going to hit them hard. Because.
So how, you're saying that you can't buy the waterworks? Did you say?
Yeah,
you can't?
Yeah, you can. They're selling for $1.5 billion. The county administrator, we met with him, okay, and talked to him. And they will sell it for he said, you give me an offer of $1.5 billion and I'll put it on the agenda. Okay. And so now we've worked out how to do that. And on September 15th, next month, we have people coming in to the country who would do that. The reason they do it's a giant construction project. Okay, and so the whole idea, we as African Americans, through Friends of the African Union Chamber of Commerce, and the thing is that we're friends of the African Union. We're not the African Union. And so as friends of the African Union, people who are allied with us, okay, all right, they can be white, they can be red, they can be yellow, okay, all right, who are allied with us, can come, and that we do this together. We move this agenda forward because it's a win-win with them, and it's a win-win with us.
So how do you stop the typical players from?
Because the typical players, okay, this is not something that they do. But let's say something that they do, okay? You know, Mark Mallory is working for an engineering firm now. Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is his region. Okay, so then they would have to gather the funds to do this, right? Okay, so let's say they could get a line of credit that would allow them to do it. Okay, it's taken us 3 years to assemble the funding and the process, and we're not through yet, but we got the end of the tunnel because we have the people who have the money coming to the table. Okay, now we thought 2 years ago we had the people with the money at the table. It turned out that they didn't have the money. Okay, but now we learned. Okay, all right. So the usual cast of characters, how you get around that is that you in a community reinvestment agreement. All right, that you write it out. So you go to Mount Auburn and you say, Mount Auburn, what do you want to do? Okay, what do you want to do to change your community over the next 15 years or the next 50 years? What projects do you have? 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 And you sign that, okay, and you do like what we did. I'm on the board, okay, of the Mount Auburn Good Housing Foundation. So now you have a CHODO, okay, Community Housing Development Organization. You make sure you have a 501c3. You make sure that you have a 501c4. We have 2 of them. Okay. You make sure that you have a Chamber of Commerce. Now, right now, when we created this Chamber of Commerce, we created it with a fiduciary, the International Black Chamber of Commerce. We're now in the process of getting our own 501c6 designation. But right now, you say when we did the United Nations, we went to them. We went as a fiduciary, okay, with a partner, okay, who had all that. So you make sure that you have a veterans group. So you go down the list of who do you need to have as a primary partner. And my primary partner when I talk finance is NCRC. Okay. Because NCRC, as I mentioned to you earlier, okay, meets annually with the Federal Reserve Chairman, the nation's biggest bank. So this is not a surprise. It's an evolution. NCRC with them and the SBA did $500 million worth of loans already. And NCRC operates a minority business development agency, female business incubator in Washington, and a minority incubator in New York City. So you have all that experience. You make sure before you get into this, the usual cast of characters are people who get their percentage, okay, because the prime contractor over here who doesn't have any CRA, et cetera, that they're in there. So if they match all this, oh, great. Hey, you know, win-win situation that they do that. So now you as Joe Public have a choice to make because you got two great competing offers. I don't just happen to think that they're going to do that. Okay, I know it's taking me on this journey 3 years and 8 months, and heart attack number 4 and 5, and you know, et cetera, you know, to get here. If they want to go through all that, that's great. Okay, and that they want to be competitive, but we are at this point. We look around, we're the only game in town. Okay. Otherwise, your rate increases forever. Okay. And Tony Parrott has said that. Okay. At community meeting, but it didn't get any play. Okay. As that, and again, if you're a county administrator and a majority on the county board, then that's not something you want to talk about to you ratepayer. That every year from now, your taxes is going to go up. Okay. All right. And so this makes you uncompetitive as a county next to Brown and next to, you know, Butler. Yeah. And so, you know, it's not something you're going to push. Hey, come to Hamilton County and everything being equal, your rates are going to go up next to your competitor in Butler and in Brown, et cetera. Okay. And so that's an opportunity for us because now most of those jobs that I'm talking about in that you look at the license plates and it's Kentucky, it's every place, and you look at those jobs and again, you know, one of the things that we did that upset some people is that we analyzed their data. Okay, see how they're working. Okay, I remember one session that Bob participated in, and they said something. You know, you just ask questions that they couldn't answer because he's got experience, right? So experience speaks. Okay, so when I talk about Africa, it's based on experience living there. It's based on experience as a diplomat. When he speaks on matters of finance, it's based on experience. When Fred speaks, it's a UC engineering graduate. Okay, it's based on a lifetimes of experience. And both me and Fred are African Scientific Institute fellows, and we took what we were going to do here to our fellowship and made a presentation at the Congressional Black Caucus in 2013.
Yeah, see, I'm learning so much.
All right, so we it's like you said, evidence-based, okay, factual-based to get this done. Okay. All right. That people, when we go public on this next month, okay, now the one part of the public side that you see is my brother's keeping, okay, because that gives us access to the federal presidential order. But what we've been doing over the past year is crossing the T's, dotting the I's. Okay, now we're moving into another stage. When I went to the White House initiative, was to, because our financiers are from Asia, and because in 2013, as an engineering firm, we went to Vietnam. In 2014, we cut this deal, okay, with Africa. Through the United Nations, we said that we could do all this in the United States. And because the United States is under this review, and I went to this White House meeting, and I said, what if we have investors who will come in to this country and that they will provide funding for the development of X, Y, and Z? How can that be done? And they said, well, they called the guy who's in charge of this region over Cincinnati. And we sat and we had a private meeting. And we said, you know, this is how it can be done. If we get our people to put up $1, will you cover it with $3? Okay, now, that's when I say cover it, the SBA does not make loans directly, but it has prime lenders, Fifth Third, PNC, et cetera, who can make a decision to make a loan themselves, but usually they won't because it's 620 or better now. That's the floor. But if you take the risk out of the floor, and, you know, we explained, you know, how this works, we take the risk, we showed them how we have the infrastructure at EY and all that. And then, so if that happens, are you interested in it? He said, yeah. Yeah. And I said, well, good. We'll, you know, I took this packet, the stuff that you read, and, you know, I showed him the letter from President Obama first. And I said, now I walked him through the package and went back all the way to the UN part, okay, and sustainable development goals, and said, you know, we were over in Addis Ababa when they were putting this together as a voting delegate. Look, we have all this. We don't have to try and get all this. But it becomes a win-win for America if we do this. If we do this in Cincinnati, if we do this in Cleveland, we do this in St. Louis, that we put in the Universal Periodic Review of the United States. And we told them, now, if the banks don't want to buy the debt that are issued in this, we think we have a buyer. And motivated buyer, may I say, and you know, because their partnership, when I say the construction company, okay, so, you know, each one of these companies that are in this chamber that we're aligning with next month, they do over $1 billion in the West, outside of their country. To be in this chamber, you have to do $1 billion or more outside of the country.
Wow.
All right, 61 of them in there. Okay, and so when we were talking to these people in terms of how we implement that, okay, so that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of days, is putting the White House briefing package together. But they showed us also in terms of the how we can go after the money on a small scale. How we get it right now, money, you know. Money that we can go after right now. Why can we go after it right now? Because we spent that 3 years and 8 months, you know, getting there. Okay. And during that period, we didn't ask for money. We self-financed that out of the business. Okay. Well, we can't do that anymore. Okay. And there's no reason we should have to do that anymore. Okay. Relative to that. So that's what we're all about. And getting done. You know, I was putting this out, okay, for people to get some idea of what we are, what we're doing. We're using, and as I told the White House, you know, you have this executive order for Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders. We're going to use my brother's keeper executive order for our people under 25 or under. When I say our people, yes, Americans who are African Americans. But as friends of the African Union, Chamber of Commerce, we've come together with our friends to do this. And so whether it's Anglo, whether Hispanic, Native American, okay, you know, if you can buy into our operational principles, okay, we're down with you, or you down with us, okay. We create a relationship by writing, by agreement, okay. It's not a verbalization. Okay, see, what I'm good is a strategic viewpoint, bringing this and that together, but it takes a team to do that. It takes a team to implement. What you know, I know what my loud, you know, I'm not a good closer. I'm not X, Y, and Z, but I'm surrounded myself with people who do X, Y, and Z, and you know, if I can get A, B, C done, they can do X, Y, and Z. All right, and so that's where I'm at right now, is closing that. Okay, and Bob likes to say, close on the money.
Trying to get to the real quick.
Yeah, and they made it plain. Okay, they understood what I was talking about, that the United States on September 25th, the final UPR declarations are going to be issued on the USA. I said, wouldn't it be great if you had an example that was mentioned in the UPR, that solution in one of 3 cities? And he said, yeah, it would be. Okay, and so we're going to see if we can do that. That's what this is about.
Debbie, Deb or Debbie?
Just,
It's Deborah.
hold on.
Who are you with?